Well, thank you, Eva, so much for joining Peacelab's podcast. I'm so excited to introduce our community to you, Eva Dalak. So if you just wanted to start off giving a little introduction about who you are and even where you are right now in the world, and I think that's a great way we can start this podcast.
Thank you, Nada. I'm very excited to be here with you. I love your presence and I love what Peacelab stands for. I'm so happy to be in support for this community. So my name is Eva Dalak. I was born in Israel. I'm Palestinian peace activator, and I'm currently in Costa Rica. And I've been here for the past 13 years. I moved here actually from New York, pregnant, 8 months pregnant, because we decided to offer our newborn a whole new lifestyle from New York. At the time, I was working for the UN in the peacekeeping department, so quite a different environment than the environment we co-created here in Costa Rica. We often say we moved from the jungle, the concrete jungle, to the real jungle in nature.
I think this is going to be a super fun podcast because now we can have a more one-to-one conversation because we've been working with each other for months now. And I'm currently in New York, and so I always try to find my jungles to escape to. I totally get it. What's so interesting about our collaboration is that I studied peacebuilding in my grad program at New York University. I just didn't go into the field and start my professional journey in the space. But what I was really excited to work on with Peacelab and peace activation, your organization, is because you have that experience, like working at the UN and being a peace builder for, you said it was like 25 plus years, right? I just wanted to talk a little bit about your work and, going from peace building to what you're building currently right now. And if you could tell the audience a little bit more about peace activation as well.
Thank you, Nada, for this question. I love the movement of peace building to peace activation. That's one of the reasons why I chose this word, because I've been in the field for more than 25 years in peace building. That was the beginning of my career with an organization called Search for Common Ground at its time. And I feel like the evolution of the field itself has been to take more into consideration what happened inside rather than just focus on the outside. So as I said, I worked in different peacekeeping missions, and I worked in the peace building field. But I feel this notion of peace building, peacekeeping, peace managing haven't tackled what actually happened inside while you are in a conflict zone. I worked in more than 22 conflict zones, and I had several burnout, including one in Ivory Coast when I was working for the UN in a peacekeeping mission. I had lost my vision during COVID. And I feel like what came out of this is the elixir of peace activation, in the sense of understanding that unless we put self-care at the center of our service, we won't be able to be at service. And there's a very important distinction to put here, because many use self-care also as a bypass to not actually do the work, or the other way around. And so the self-care stands on the two opposite sides of either doing it too much or doing it not enough. And for me, peace activation come at the center of the balance of how much self-care do I need, and it's going to differ for each person, so that I can come fully present with what is, with the reality that I need to tackle, so that I'm not projecting what's happening inside of me, my own feeling of helplessness, powerlessness, and bring it into a field that is already contaminated. And so I feel like my own journey, my personal journey, is reflected in peace activation and is a model, at least as I perceive it, to how we can activate peace inside of us, meaning how do I take care of myself? And for me, I just can give an example of this morning before this podcast. I woke up, I journaled, I went out, grounded my feet on the earth, did breathing exercise, did the 5 Tibetan rites, then came back, had breakfast, and was getting ready for this podcast. If I didn't do that, I don't think I would be able to be present with you right now. And that's something that I've experimented several times, of just like how much me grounding before grounding into myself and grounding into nature allows me then to be present with anything that comes to my plate during my workday. Yeah, I think that's kind of says for me, I think. And at the end of the day, is coming back to what I've achieved or not achieved, and practicing again movement, grounding on the earth, meditation, healthy food, being with the family, and going back to sleep and redoing the whole, process every day.
It's so beautiful. And I think that's why we originally started to have conversations about a partnership and to work together on various things with peace activation and lab, because we both understood that peace is a state of being. I always like to tell people that it's transformative. It's something that we have to step into daily and is a practice. I really resonate with that. I just understanding through my academic background about the peace building field or impact or global development work in general, I always think about, these people are the ones that need inner peace work the most and to need to be presence the most because of what you just talked about of this burnout that you face, especially when you're working in conflict zones or emergency situations where it feels like there's not a moment to catch up with the breath or even to recenter because there's chaos. This is the most extreme point, but I even think about the daily life of living in New York where I wake up and I already feel like it's 3 p.m. and it's only 9 a.m. in the morning because the time and energy of the city just seems to go so quickly. And I catch myself sometimes saying, you can do the meditation and the workout after you complete all these things in the morning, or that can come after you get this assignment done, and then I can breathe. If you want to elaborate more about this, about what you've seen on the field in this space and how people are having to work around emergency and conflict zone situations where there's so much chaos, and maybe even hire people who are just living in the urban setting and just working corporate, and it's still a lot of stress on the body and the mind, but it's just a different world, but we're all kind of experiencing the same thing.
Absolutely, Neda. This is such an important point. We are all experiencing the same thing, regardless of if we are in New York or in a conflict zone. The chaos inside is reflected in the chaos outside. And that's why working inside would help us change the reality and shift the reality outside. It's really about how are we dealing with the situation that we are in. And it doesn't matter where that situation is, because the situation would trigger inside of us this feeling of there's not enough time, there's not enough, I'm not doing enough, I have to do this first. And so I think that peace is a choice and a practice. And so what does it mean to choose coming into calm and centeredness and being rooted before I start acting outside, so that it's not like chicken running without a head, so that it's not like a hamster rolling on each other, And I feel like when I I moved from Ivory Coast peacekeeping mission after my burnout. I moved to California to Topanga, and I started studying spiritual psychology, and that's kind of what transformed my whole journey. And that was 15 years ago. And it was really a transformative moment because it was a choice, a conscious choice that I took to choose me and my relationship at the time, and give myself a chance to recover and not just rest. We have R&R when we are working in a conflict zone, and then you have 2 or 3 weeks to go somewhere else, visit your family, friend, to rest from the conflict zone, and then you come back. But actually, this is even more traumatizing because basically you're doing a yo-yo with your nervous system, and your nervous system doesn't realize that it doesn't have time to really truly relax. And so for me, when I arrived to Topanga and started this program in spiritual psychology, it took me 3 months of doing nothing, literally nothing, just observing nature to realize how stressed and traumatized I was. And the program brought to my awareness how much the conflict that I was saving or that I was working in are just a reflection of the conflict I had inside of me as Palestinian who grew up in Israel, as a Muslim that was in a Christian school, as all this diversity of identity that I never had the time to really look into or reflect because I was very busy working, doing good, and saving the world, you know. And and that moment, I remember it was like October 2010, like actually 15 years ago. I remember I thought, oh my God, that's why I've been running around in comfort zone. It's because I didn't want to take that moment to pause and see what's happening inside. And I was in this class with 200 students, mostly American, and each one was sharing why they were coming and why they chose to do this program. And a lot of the conflict that they were sharing was like sexual abuse, anxiety, depression. And listening to them, I'm like, oh, it's actually the same. The feeling and the emotion that we have, that we're experiencing inside of us are actually the same, even though I'm just coming from Ivory Coast from a peacekeeping mission, and they're coming from downtown LA, you know? Some of them came from New York, some of them from around really various cities in the US. And I remember at the time, I had a judgment about that. I'm like, oh my God, you white people, that's what you're busy with. You know, there are real people being killed and don't have food and, you know, like that's more important to save. That judgment sat with me for a while. And I remember it took me maybe 3 or 4 months to realize, to work with this judgment and to realize that actually this is the judgment I have on myself. And it had nothing to do with the people that I was listening to. And that program was like 2 years, as I said, 2 years program, master program at the time. It doesn't exist anymore. But it's basically soul-centered living. And it taught me 33 skills, part of them that we will be sharing in this program that you and I are going to be doing together. And that's kind of the skills that I use now for myself, but also for my coaching clients, of like how to really sit in chaos, how to really sit with all this emotion and be okay, how to practice compassion and self-forgiveness when you identify the judgment. Because we have judgment all the time. We judge everything. But we judge ourselves, we judge the situation, we judge other, we judge God. We're like we're a judging being. More than a human being, we have become a judging being. And for me, the ultimate test was when I lost my eyesight during COVID. That was like for 2 years, I couldn't see. Uh, and I realized that because I didn't see, I didn't have this tool of judgment. I couldn't judge anymore. There was no more judgment. Obviously I was judging myself a lot for what I was going through, but I couldn't judge anymore the people outside because I couldn't see. And that's the interesting thing, because we talk about vision, finding your vision, working with your vision, developing your vision, you know, plan 5 years, 10 years, where you want to be. But we don't realize that our vision is tainted by our judgment. And so when I lost my eyesight, I had to come to terms with the fact that the only judgment that exists have nothing to do with the outside world, have to do with me inside. And the judgment that I hold on myself, on what I'm going through, I went through, the relationship I had. It was a deep, internal, intense 2 years of my life, with from which I came out with an elixir, which is peace activation. And that's why I really firmly believe that more than peace building, more than peacekeeping, more than conflict management or conflict resolution, I deeply believe in activating peace inside out. I deeply believe in your own philosophy of the peace, that peace is a laboratory where we can explore these different emotions that we have, this different state of mind, different belief, whether rational or irrational, that we can really explore and allow to be released into the nothingness from which they came. and be okay with it. Like come really to a place where just a breath will bring you back.
There's so much truth in it. This is really the work I want to be doing until I'm like 70 or 80 years old, because it's what you're saying. It's just truth. And always it comes back to personal accountability. Because I think a lot of times people right now, especially with so many things that we see on social media and what's going on in the world, and people are feeling very hopeless and helpless. I think this personal accountability and also this reflection of like where we're holding judgment to the outside world, because even fear is judgment, or discomfort is judgment to what you see, to me. And what's empowering in this, and the reason why I started Peacelab, was because I didn't even know how to solve these big challenges myself. I was like, I'm one person, and I feel like I just need to let the professionals do it, or the people who've had more experience. But I didn't like that feeling of not being active in my daily life for something. But what strengthened me and like gave me purpose again was to remember that I can work on myself, and how that will trickle into my relationships and in my projects and my work. And it's not that I can go right now and help the people of Afghanistan because I'm Afghan, or help Palestinians just because I don't have access like this. Like I can do my small part of like protesting and what have you. But what really gave me peace was that if there's a way to work on myself and then in turn help people find that own inner peace within them, how we can work as community to offer more intentionally and consciously to the things that we are giving in our service.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What you're talking to is everybody has a piece to the piece. And we all have our own piece that we can bring to the global peace. And it starts with me. It starts with my own relationship to myself, my relationship to my partner, my relationship to my kids, my relationship to my extended family, my relationship with my neighbor, my relationship with, like, in every single relationship, I have an opportunity to make the world more peaceful. And it's very important to understand that peace activation is not a peaceful movement. Peace activation is actually inviting triggers and inviting disagreement. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to have triggers, to have feeling, emotions that are not positive. Totally fine, because this is how we address the shadow and this is how we address the darkness. I mean, I lived in the dark for 2 years. And for me, it's really important to the bypass that we have on positive thinking and positive psychology and positive, I don't know, is a bypass. Yes, it has a place. And we're not living in a positive world. We're living in a world that has positive and negative. We're living in a world that has light and dark. And we're living in a, polarized world. And so how do we deal with that without taking sides? How can we be in the middle, finding the middle path, being in balance with the light and the dark, and with the the beauty and the ugliness of what's happening right now. And for me, that's where peace activation and activating peace inside out is. I'm going to do my best to be as kind, as loving, as present with myself, my partner, my kids, my colleagues, etc. But there are going to be moments where I'm going to be upset, I'm going to be frustrated, where I'm going to be angry, where I'm not going to be okay. And I'm going to be able to express that and come back to my heart. That's the difference. That I'm not going to hold on the judgment, or I'm not going to hold on the anger and frustration and resentment and throw them on you. I'm going to take responsibility on my own emotion and come to them. I'm going to share them. I'm going to, while sharing, understand that this has nothing to do with you in a way. Like we're living in in a world where systems of oppressions and injustices are all around us. But fighting it without taking care of me is not going to improve them. It's going to like worsen it, and that's what has been happening to me. So I think we need a different way of doing things, because even all this international system that we built after World War II are obsolete right now. is what's happening in Gaza. They just like lost every single credibility they ever had. It's just like it's so shameful what's happening. And at the same time, to add shame and blame and guilt to the field is not going to improve the field. When I started Peace Activation, I launched it with a sentence of Rumi: out there beyond right doing and wrongdoing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. And that's where I invite. The invitation is really to meet people in that field, where we are cleaning the field of blame, shame, and guilt, and taking radical responsibility on our own emotions, so that when we are able to take an action, we're taking it from a place of center and not adding to the chaos and not adding to the distress. And look at this, like I really believe that humanity will prevail. It's not going to be because of the institution will change their mind or that people in power will change. It will be because the citizens of the world are going to wake up and realize that they are sovereign and we are free to choose our action. And the only way we can be free to choose our action is if we take responsibility for our emotions and are not being ruled and manipulated by emotions of fear and anger. That's the way forward.
This makes me think about, for people who are listening and they're thinking about like the first steps to start acting more as a sovereign or even expressing their emotions more. Can you kind of walk us through or give us an example? Because what does this actually look like? For me, I know that I was always able to intellectualize my emotions separately. I would be triggered during the day. Either I didn't like a comment that my boss gave me, or my sister and I had an argument. And I always could go back and intellectualize where I went wrong. I do think that I take responsibility after when I tried to change the energy. It's always a practice for me to start learning how to allow what is coming up in real time to pass and honor it. And I just wanted to talk about this a little bit more. If you could give us some guidance on these kind of real life emotions that come up and how they might be signaling something deeper, and how to face. And then how does this relate to being sovereign and being sovereign in your emotions, or if you want to elaborate on that, because I really like what you are identifying here.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for the first time in one of my first therapy sessions, the therapist asked me, how do you feel? And I said, I think I feel okay. And she's like, okay, how do you feel? And I said, I think I feel good. And I couldn't get it. I really couldn't get it that she was asking me for my feeling and I was responding from my mind. And so what you're referring to is something I've been through, and I think many of us are. We are so disconnected from our feelings because nobody asks us really, how do we feel? Like even the question, we don't want to hear how the other person feels because we feel overwhelmed already by what we feel that we are trying to repress. And so when we say, "Oh, how are you?" Like I want to hear, "I'm good." I don't want you to give me the whole spiel of like, "Oh my God, I feel powerless. I feel helpless. This happened to me, and I'm angry, and blah blah blah, and blah blah blah." I'm not interested, you know. And so for me, the first step is to acknowledge that. And so when I ask the question, how do I really feel? And pause and take a moment to, ooh, wow, that's intense. She just said that, or my boss said that, and I feel, oh, it brings me like, and in this second of the breath, I go back to that moment maybe of where my mom, my dad, or I don't know, something, an image come to mind. And I stay with it for a breath. And I come back to center. Just like in the meditation that we just did, I come back to my heart. I come back to center. My center is always available to me. And sometimes I think we did that in one of the exercises in our session. Like we went through a deep memory that was really painful. And I say, okay, touch your body. Remember, touch your body. And once you touched your body, you came back to the present. And so what happened in this moment of triggers, when somebody says something upsetting to us and we're like in a turmoil of emotion, is that we lose ground with the present. We go back in memories. Our body, our nervous system can't take it and it goes into fight, flight, or freeze. And so either we freeze and we don't know what to answer to that boss that said this nasty comment, and we just like blink, don't say anything, and go continue to do the work that we were doing and not even paying attention to that hurtful moment. Or we fight back and we start arguing with that boss and saying, no, I didn't do that, I did that, da, 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 da. Or we actually go away. And so these three avenues of that the nervous system, the our nervous system is offering us, doesn't allow us really to regulate our nervous system. And so what happened in that moment, for me at least now, is like I'm noticing the emotion. If I am able to address it in the moment on the spot, I'll do that. I'll do that with putting my hand on my heart, holding my knee, depending on where I'm at. Or if I'm able to go somewhere, like imagine I'm in an office, I can go to the toilet and just take a breath and look at myself in the eyes and say, hey, we're here. We're here now. We're not in that memory. We're not in that situation. This person that just said that comment had nothing to do with how you feel. This is your choice. That's where I take my power back from that comment, that emotion, you know? And so some people can say, oh, it's easily said than done. And that's where I say it's a choice and it's a practice. Of course, it's easily said than done. You need to practice it. You need to practice, and you'll probably fail in the beginning. You won't be able to do that. And you're going to say to yourself, it's okay. You're not going to judge yourself. You're going to say, it's okay. Next time I'll do better. I'm doing my best. I'm with you. You're basically speaking to yourself constantly because we have so many nasty voices in our head. And so the only way we can embrace the darkness and embrace our shadows and embrace those moments, the parts of us that we don't want to deal with, the parts of us that we want to hide and don't let anybody see, because if they see them, then they won't like us or they would reject us and we would feel so terrible. The only way we can do that is to embrace them, is to invite them in, is to say, you're also part of me. I'm not perfect. I'm human. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to be human. And the human journey is actually addressing all the shadows, addressing the darkness and the light, addressing the fact that some moment I'm going to be good, some moment I'm not going to be good. And how do I deal in those moments that I'm not good without judgment, not on the situation, not on myself, and not on the other? Does this answer your question?
It does. Thank you. It's like what you said, it's a practice. So we do private coaching sessions right now, and it's part of this longer work of hours so I can eventually start being a peace building facilitator or, working to hold space for other people as well. But right now, the 9 sessions that I'm doing with Eva, so our audience knows, is on inner peace and really calming my own nervous system and allowing me to address some of the darkness and shadow that I was holding on to subconsciously and not even really aware of. And even though I've had a practice of inner peace for about a decade, I've never actually worked with a coach or therapist and sit with somebody in real time to process these things and understand my own blind spots. And I think it's really important. I feel like it's a new step in my evolution of my soul. And one of the moments you were talking about was in our session where I was talking about a traumatic moment for me. And it was really crazy because when I was explaining it to you, I was getting very emotional. And in that a few moments, I actually lost a sense of the present moment. And I was not even aware that that happened until you brought me back and you told me to hold my wrist and you were bringing me back into the room and into my body. And I think that it was such a profound moment for me because I realized then that, oh my gosh, how many times do I do this subconsciously throughout the day? Where I am triggered and your brain is mush and you're just kind of like going through the motions and operating, but you don't really have the tools yet to remind yourself to get back into the present moment. And even though in that I was kind of like, I was shocked, I felt like I was like in a trance and I came out of it when I came back to the present moment. Um, it was also very exciting too, because I thought about once I start practicing this and start becoming more familiar with these breath work tools or like somatic tools to come back to the body, how much more power I have every day. spaces. And I think that's really impactful. And so this is like part of, what we are collaborating on. You're going to be training people for the Peacelab community on these types of learnings. And it seems like simple on paper, but I think when you are, we just lose sight of it, even for me, who I think like my whole work right now is about peace, and I'm still forgetting these like simple things, but it's extremely important.
I just want to add also that I'm coming to this with like such an embodied experience. Like when I coach you, I've been in that place that you're talking about, and that's really important to mention. I was there as well. It's not that I was like I went out of the university and I had all these tools. I didn't. I had a burnout because I didn't take care of myself. I've been really in a lot of situations where I didn't know that I was disconnected. I didn't know that I was not even present in my body. So I think it's also important to know that I'm 51. Like I've been doing this work for 25 years, 25, more than 25 years. I've been practicing this. So I have to say, like, I want to share, I'm 51. I'm 51 years old. And so there's something that comes with this embodied experience. It's not something that, you read on ChatGPT on how do you regulate your my nervous system. No, I've been in a situation where I didn't even know I had a nervous system. I didn't even know that I was disconnected. And so it's important to acknowledge where we are at in our journey and be okay. Like I often say, like, life is a school and we're all on our own pace and our own journey. You would never think of telling a person that is in first grade or second grade, hey, why aren't you in 10th grade? You won't think about it. So I think that we never know what grade the other person is at or even where we are at. And it's lesson after lesson that we are learning through these experiences that we consider as bad, through this situation that we consider as like terrible. But growth comes from these challenges, in one of the first class I teach in peace activation and also in the conflict transformation courses that I've been teaching, is that conflict is natural, neutral, and necessary. And in Chinese, the word crisis is actually composed of two words, wei ji. And wei ji means danger and opportunity. So while we are in this dangerous state, there's also this opportunity for growth. And so while you're going through this terrible emotion of depression, helplessness, hopelessness, anxiety, frustration, anger, there's a jewel for you there. And if you allow yourself to move through these emotions so that these emotion energy emotions are able to come, you'll be able to come out of it victorious. But you'll only be able to come out of it victorious if you allow it and embrace it and not if you fight it.
It's like the English language has limited us with just the word conflict. And I think a lot of the pushback I get for people who are not familiar with like peace building or a lot of these concepts, they'll tell me, Nida, I even had one friend, she said, how can you tell me that my Palestinian grandmother will sit with an Israeli and talk about something? She lives in New York, but she was just giving me like feedback about Peacelab. She's like, I don't really understand this. And I think I always try to demystify what peace means. And I always start with, it's not void of conflict. You can't eradicate it. It's here. And also it's not this utopian end goal that we're going to get to. Right. That's why I always say like transformative is something we do every day, is the state of being. But I kind of wanted to dive deeper into this because I think this is really, for the Peacelab community, I feel that I'm working more with people who are not in the impact or development space, just maybe creatives or young entrepreneurs. And the whole mission is to get to a place where we are pushing peace out, like peace expansion, peace activation, as they define it, once they get to a space of being centered. But I think what is really helpful, I alluded to it earlier, but the fact that you do training for conflict transformation and peace building for people who are working on the field as well, who are in Palestine and Israel coming together. So I want to talk about this and your methodology and your training for people who are actually in the eye of the storm to help show that if certain people are having these kind of conversations and trying to better understand in spaces like this, or even you worked in Afghanistan, what we can do here with more privileged environment and situation, even though we are experiencing very similar fears and emotions just in the human experience. But if you just want to elaborate a little bit more on that.
Sure. You know, peace activation methodology, it started with like an invitation to come to the field. I invited Palestinian Israeli friends and anybody who was triggered by what was happening in Palestine, Israel, to come to a Zoom and just share their feeling. And what we noticed is that many people that came, when they started expressing about how they feel about the situation, they realized it had nothing to do with the situation. It had to do with their own, with what was going on for them. And I'm talking about international people that are from around the world that were triggered by what was happening in Gaza, were triggered by what was happening in Israel. And the only rule that I had in the Zoom meeting is that we're going to listen. We're going to share and we're going to listen. We're not going to comment. We're not going to react. We're not going to rephrase. Each person is going to share where they are at in the present, not as a narrative that they heard from anybody else or from TikTok or Instagram and bring it. No, how do you feel? And the thing is, we realize is that people, again, what I said before, people don't connect to how they feel. And so they project how they feel on something that is happening inside. And that's when they feel helpless and hopeless. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do about it. But at the same time, once they were able to connect to their own feeling and express, and then hear someone else connect to their own feeling and express how they're feeling, and seeing the variety of feelings that people had around the same situation and the variety of perspective that they each held, brought to such an understanding and humanity of our shared humanity. And I'm talking about these calls, I'm talking about like people that came from just like after, like I started this course in October 23. So it was just like fresh, like no need to say about what's happening right now. Even. It was very fresh. And the ability of people to feel where the other person is without feeling denied in his or her own existence, I think is key. Because what's happening in conflict is that we feel that we're not allowed, we're not allowed to exist. Our essence, our existence is being uh, denied and fought back, you know. And I think, in a way, the only way forward and the only way we can really capture back our power, and whether we are in the trenches or we are in some else around the world, is that being aware of my nervous system and being aware that I have a responsibility for myself in how I bring myself to those spaces. What I do in Palestine and in Israel, I do separate groups, like in person. I do training on trauma informed peace building, and each group is its own language. And I think that's also another key element of like trauma happens in your own native language. And then when you try to express your feeling in a language that is not your own or that is learned, you have less vocabulary. And, and so having space to be and express where you're at without being in a space that is be national, where you have to compete on suffering or compare suffering. Whether you are Palestinian, Israeli, international, like regardless of where you're at, I think it's very important to remember that each narrative in its own is valid and it's not there to justify my existence. I am legitimate in my existence regardless of the narrative that I hold. Just like you are legitimate in your existence regardless of the narrative or identity you hold. And so moving away from the judgment that we hold on the identity and moving away from the judgment that we hold on situation would allow us really to activate, more than building, to activate the peace inside of us and bring it into spaces that are in need. So one concrete example for people in New York or elsewhere or the Peacelab community is like taking note of how they feel in their body when they are listening or scrolling down Instagram or TikTok or whatever their social media that they're using, and noticing the polarizing language and noticing the disagreement and being okay with it, bringing a breath into this and saying, okay, I hear you say this and I completely disagree, but that doesn't make you a bad person. You know, a lot of the work I do also is around understanding that we're all working together to have a harmonious world, a harmonious family. Nobody wakes up in the morning and say, today I want to kill someone or I want to be killed. Most of us have similar needs, except that there's a feeling of greed and feeling of not enough. And so we want to take more. And we think, if I take more from you to have more for me, and for this I need to kill you. And that's where working on the root causes of the conflict and the root causes of why are we living in such a world of chaos and genocide and all. Why? Because we've lost our power. We gave our power away. We gave our power away to institutions that supposedly are representing us, and they're not. And that's why I said in the beginning, the way forward is going to be for us to awaken and take our power back and start going to the origin of why we put this institution in the first place.